All right, teams, let's look at our do now for today. Looking at our do now problems, we're asked to determine whether during an equation the inequality is going to be preserved, reversed, or there's not enough information to tell. So remember that when you're talking about whether it's going to be preserved, reversed, or there's not enough information to tell, that you're looking to see if there's any of those operations done to both sides. So really you're paying attention to your inverse operations. So in order to kind of really clarify this for you, I'm going to go through each of these and determine whether it's preserved, reversed, or there's not enough information to tell. So looking at this, we think about our inverse operations. Really that first inverse operation should never matter in a two-step inequality because it's always going to be addition or subtraction. So here I'm adding -3 to both sides. Remember that addition or subtraction really just shifts up and down the number line and never is going to reverse things. -5x is less than -3. So here we can see that -5 divided by -5. Now, I've divided both sides by a negative. That's one of our indicators. A multiplication or division by a negative is going to cause us to reverse the inequality symbol. So here we're going to get x is greater than 3/5, and this is going to be reversed. So I want you to think about this for a second. If you're looking at a two-step inequality, you should be able to immediately tell whether it's going to be preserved or reversed just by looking in one particular place. Talk amongst your group, see if you can identify the one place where you can identify immediately whether a two-step equation is going to be preserved or reversed. Pause the video to have that discussion and come back as soon as you have. So if we're thinking about it, when we look at this term, whatever is multiplied or divided from the x, that's always going to be the inverse operation for the multiplication and division that we have to do. So we can always look at that term, and if that term has a negative coefficient, we're going to end up dividing by a negative number. Over here, we're going to end up multiplying by the reciprocal of a negative number. So we can identify here, just by looking at the x term, whether it's going to be preserved or reversed. So looking through this one has a positive. When we end up solving this one, we're going to divide by a +5, so it's going to be preserved. Coming down here to the bottom, it's the same thing. We're going to end up dividing by a +5, so this will be preserved. And when we solve this one, we're going to multiply by the reciprocal, which is going to be -2/1, and so this one will be reversed. All right, so that's one thing to keep in mind. One of the most common mistakes in solving inequalities is not having the inequality symbol the right way. And if you don't reverse it when you're supposed to when you're solving an inequality, that's going to make it wrong every time. All right, let's flip on over and look at the problems we have for today. Okay, today's aim, Kipsters will be able to write, solve, and interpret solutions to inequalities. Solutions to inequalities. Right, solve and interpret solutions, multiple solutions to inequalities. All right, so for the most part today, you're going to be working with your team to go ahead and solve a problem with the group of you. One thing I'll say is, like, going with today's work, you've got one Chromebook open, which means you have one calculator. When you and your teammates decide what calculations need to be done, you can use the calculator app on your Chromebook to go ahead and do the calculations. That will save you a little bit of time. So looking at this particular problem, the first thing I want you to do, you and your team, go ahead and write an inequality. Make sure that you've agreed upon it. Make sure that all teammates are sharing. All teammates should write an inequality first and then discuss. All teammates should solve the inequality, then discuss. When we're talking about interpreting the inequality, I want you to go ahead and write a complete sentence that tells you what your solution actually means in the real world, okay? So go ahead and, as your team, go ahead and deal with this particular problem. So as we go ahead and look at this problem, It says the annual county carnival is being held this summer and will last 5.5 days. Use this information and given information below to answer each problem. You are the owner of the biggest and newest roller coaster called the Gentle Giant. The roller coaster costs $6 to ride. The operator of the ride must pay $200 per day for the ride rental and $65 for the safety inspection. If you want to make a profit of at least $1,000 per day, what is the minimum number of people that must ride the roller coaster each day? So we're not really worried in this particular case about how many days there are, because we're trying to figure out everything on an each day basis. Okay, so we're trying to figure out each day. So each day we want to make at least $1,000. So that means we want greater than or equal to $1,000. This inequality symbol going the wrong way was definitely the most common mistake on people's alone time. When we say at least, that means we want to make more than $1,000, but we're okay with $1,000. And so I think a lot of people struggle with that language, and they wrote their inequality symbol the wrong way, despite having everything else done correctly. So profit, if we want to think about profit, that's how much we make minus how much we have to pay. So we're going to make money on our riders. So that's going to be 6 times our number of riders minus 65 minus another 200. So when we simplify this, is going to be 6r minus 265 is greater than or equal to 1,000. So I'm going to pause right here. If you didn't have the correct inequality and you made some mistakes on your inequality, please go ahead and erase and start from this point and go ahead and resolve the inequality as a group. All right, so looking at this, going ahead to solve the inequality, 6r minus 265 plus 265 is greater than or equal to 1,000 plus 265. This gives me 6r is greater than or equal to 1265. Now, this is just kind of a stopping point to just check in about knowing about whether the inequality is reversed or preserved. In this particular case, we see that we've added something to both sides. Anytime there's an addition, we should be able to move on. Going back and looking at our original simplified inequality, we should be able to know immediately that this is not going to be reversed because we have a positive coefficient for our multiplication. Which leads us in this next step to divide both sides by a positive number. And this is going to give me r is greater than or equal to, then we're not going to get quite a perfect number here. And it's going to give us 210 rides and point, I believe it's 8.6, no, it's 8.3 repeating. All right, so in the real world, what we want to think about, like interpreting the solution, the number of rides is greater than or equal to 210.83. And in the real world, though, we need to think about it is we have to have more than that, and we can't have 0.83 of a ride. So in our real world, our interpretation is that there needs to be at least 211 rides to make $1,000 profit. All right, come on over to your next problem. We have a youth summer camp is budgeted for $2,000, and the campers to attend a carnival. The cost for each camper is $17.95, which includes general admission to the carnival and 2 meals. The youth summer camp also must pay $250 for the chaperones to attend the carnival and $350 for transportation. What is the greatest number of campers who can attend the carnival if the camp must stay within its budgeted amount? All right, so again, this is a problem that I want you and your team to jump through. Again, each teammate should be writing the inequality themselves, then check in. Then you should all solve the inequalities independently, then check in, and then go ahead and write your interpretation for your solution. That's something you guys can discuss and write once as a group. right, so go ahead and pause the video and get that done now. So looking at this, we're looking at this as we have a $2,000 of budget, so however much we spend must be less than or equal to the $2,000. Each camper, so it's going to be $17.95 times each camper. Plus we're also going to spend an additional $250 and an additional $350. So this should be the inequality that we've started with. If it's not the inequality that you started with, go ahead and pause your group right now. Go ahead and reset and resolve. When we simplify this, we're going to get $17.95 times the number of campers plus $600. Needs to be less than or equal to 2,000. $17.95 C plus 600 plus negative 600 is less than or equal to 2,000 plus negative 600. $17.95 times C is, I'm going to pause on that for a second. Thinking about the inequality symbol, again, it's an addition, so it's not going to be reversed. And if we go back to our original inequality, we can see that this is a positive coefficient. So we're not going to be reversing our inequality symbol as we go throughout this one. Go ahead and use a calculator to go ahead and divide this one out. So $17.95 divided by $17.95. Again, inequality is preserved. C is less than or equal to, and this should come out to about 77.99. And as we come down here, we want to interpret the solution. All right. So again, in the real world, we can't have 0.99 of a camper, which means that we're not going to have quite enough, something that's less than or equal to $77.99. So in the real world, they can take a maximum of 77 campers. Obviously, with as close as it is, we could probably figure out exactly how much more they need to find, and I'm sure they can probably scrape it together in the cushions of the couches that they're sitting in. All right, flip on over. We've got 2 more problems to do today. All right, again, go ahead and solve this problem. Write the inequality independently. Check in with your team. Make sure your team's all on the same page. Go ahead and solve the inequality independently, then go ahead and check in with your teammates, make sure they're all on the same page, and then go ahead and as a team discuss and write your interpretation. Go ahead and pause the video and get that done, and then come back in to check in. All right, we're back to the carnival. The owner pays an exotic animal exhibit, which is $650 for the entire time that the exhibit is displayed. The owner of the exhibit has no other expenses except for the daily insurance cost. If the owner of the animal exhibit wants to make more than $500 in profit for the 5.5 days, what is the greatest daily insurance rate he can have? All right. So again, profits, that's going to be our value minus our costs. So what we can see here is that we're going to need this to be, the owner wants to make more than $500, so greater than $500. Notice it's not more than or equal to, or it's not at least, so that's why we have just a greater than symbol. Looking at this, we know that there's $650 already made, so we're looking at, but we also need to subtract away the cost of the insurance. All right, so the cost of the insurance We don't know how much that is, but we know that it's going to be 5.5 days times the cost of the insurance. All right, so make sure this is the inequality that you had. If it's not, please go ahead and make sure that you have it fixed and you've discussed what mistake that you've made. And then we're going to go ahead and go about solving this inequality. Now, this inequality is very different than any of the other inequalities because we're going to have to change this to add the opposite. And now we can see that our multiplication term has a negative coefficient. And that's going to mean that we're going to end up reversing the inequality symbol when we get our answer. So me recognizing that already, I can go ahead and put a reversed inequality symbol at the end so I remember to do that. All right, so I'm just going to rewrite this as negative 5.5i, just plus 650 is greater than 500. So I'm going to add a negative 650 to both sides. This is not what causes us to flip our inequality symbol. So I'm going to leave the inequality symbol for now. This adds up to 0, gives me negative 5.5 times I. Is greater than, and this is going to be a negative value because this is more negative than it is positive, so negative 150. Divide both sides by a negative 5.5, so this is where the bells and alarms should be going off in our head. We divided both sides by a negative, so that's why the inequality symbol is reversed. That gives me I, and then using my calculator, I is less than $27.27. So interpreting this, it says I is less than $27.27. Well, I is the amount of insurance that we're paying. So the insurance must be less than $27.27. All right, and we've got one last problem. Same story. Go ahead and write your inequality on your own. Solve the inequality on your own. Again, checking in with your team before you guys move forward, and then interpret the solution. All right. Several vendors at a carnival sell products and advertise their business. Shane works for a recreational company that sells ATVs, dirt bikes, snowmobiles, and motorcycles. His boss paid him $500 for working all of the days of the carnival, plus 5% commission on the sales that he made. What is the minimum amount of sales that Shane needs to make to earn more than $1,500? So again, we're looking, this is going to be a greater than $1,500. He's making $500 plus however much commission he makes. So remember when we're determining the amount of commission, that's going to be 5% of his total sales. So that's 0.05 of his sales. And normally I'd put an S here, but I'm just going to put an X because S always gets confusing. So this should be our inequality. We should know right now, just looking at this, my coefficient here is positive, so this is not going to be reversed at any point in time. I'll just rewrite it down here so I can solve 0.05x plus 500 is greater than 1,500. I'm going to add a negative 500 to both sides. .05 x is greater than 1,000, and divide by 0.05. And that's going to tell us that x is greater than $20,000 of sales. So coming through and interpreting this, we should be thinking through what this interpretation looks like. if his sales are greater than 20,000, so he must sell $20,000 to earn a total of $1,500. All right, so now you're going to independently work on your alone time. This is not a time for you to be working and helping out with your teammates. This is a time to judge and determine how much you and your teammates have learned together today.